Hello, my name is Victoria Duran, and welcome to my Theory to Practice presentation. During my presentation, I will discuss the content of research, my inquiry focus and rationale, key findings from my literature, data collection and analysis, the findings of those collection and analysis, my reflection, and my next steps. The content of my research is I currently teach at a kindergarten through 5th grade campus. We have 587 students enrolled, 70.36% are Hispanic or Latino, where 29.64% are not Hispanic or Latino. Of the 29.64%, 9% are white, 13.8% American Indian, 1.87 other Asian, 0.85 Black or African American, 0.5 Pacific Islander, and 2.9% multi-ethnic groups. 92.7% of our students are socioeconomically disadvantaged. We have 27.6% English learners. We are a Title I and a Title VII school. Title VII is our Indian and Native American and Alaska Native American education funding. We have a very supportive administration. In our community, we have several partnerships with Target and Walmart, and also we have a very close Indian reservation, and the Tule River Tribal Council is also very supportive of our education program. We also have a very supportive local library that does lots of reading incentives for our students. In my classroom, I am currently the reading intervention teacher on campus. I see reading intervention groups. Currently, I have 16 groups of anywhere between 1st grade and 4th grade students. I push into 3 kindergarten classrooms for 30 minutes a day. My groups are typically 3 to 7 students per group. All the students are far below grade level in reading, 1, 2, or even 3 grade levels below. All my students that I currently see are lacking reading foundation skills. And the curriculum that I currently use is the intervention component to the Wonders ELA program that our district adopted. My inquiry focus and rationale. My focus of my research was to find strategies that would enhance my students' phonological and phonemic awareness in order to help improve their acquisition of reading foundation skills. I wanted to research which phonemic and phonological awareness skills best enhance my students' ability to read or be successful readers. I also want to know how phonological and phonemic awareness skills were developed in children and where and when we can fill those gaps to make sure that they become successful readers. The rationale behind this was that according to our district's language arts adoption, it comes with a diagnostic assessment book which states that research has shown that deficits in phonological and phonemic awareness may be at the root of many difficulties in reading and spelling for children. There was a large group of 1st graders that were coming in this year at the beginning that were lacking basic pre-reading foundation skills, and I was looking for strategies that can be explicitly taught to fill those deficits that were identified with the diagnostic assessments that were provided by our adopted ELA curriculum. Some key findings from literature. I found that children begin to develop phonemic awareness skills when their home and daycare environment provides them with a rich language experience and allows them to actively explore and manipulate sounds. In essence, that means that they are listening to nursery rhymes, they're singing songs that play with sounds, they play games that play with words, and they also practice phoneme manipulation, so changing sounds, making new words, and making it fun to learn that way. I also learned that the possibility that phonological and phonemic awareness skills are not precursors to reading acquisition, but are actually a skill that is acquired simultaneously. The phonological and phonemic awareness instruction is not just for the underprivileged, but is also beneficial for all children. So students that are coming from a rich language experience at home or in a daycare environment can still benefit from the instruction in phonological and phonemic awareness. And finally, these skills must be taught in the primary grades. And according to the Becoming a Nation of Readers report, except in cases of diagnosed individual need, phonics instruction should have been completed by the end of 2nd grade. So those students that are still needing that phonics instruction should be on a Tier 2 or even Tier 3 of response to intervention program. So my first data collection and analysis, the rationale for this data collection was to identify students that were struggling with the phonological and phonemic awareness. I chose 2 of my reading intervention groups that were first grade students and were lacking letter sound recognition. There were 12 students total, 9 boys and 3 girls. The language proficiency of these students is there were 6 English only students and 6 EL students, so half and half. This group of students was given the diagnostic assessment at the end of their kindergarten year, which assessed their ability to identify lowercase letters and their sounds. If they were able to do that, then they were asked to blend a CVC word. If the students passed the section, they were able to move on. The responses are recorded on a separate student recording sheet, and the students don't see that when they're being assessed. So they don't see what's being marked wrong or what's being marked correct. The chosen students that, for my inquiry, were not proficient in their letter sound diagnostic assessment at the end of kindergarten, and therefore they were unable to blend a CVC word. For this data collection, I used another part of our ELA program of the Wonders program. They provide a phonological and phonemic awareness diagnostic assessments for students that are lacking those skills. Within these 2 assessments, there are subtests that assess students' ability to perform different phonological and phonemic tasks and progress in difficulty according to the development sequence in which these skills are generally learned. So it progressively gets more difficult, the tasks. If a student misses 2 or more questions in a subtest, the assessment is stopped and you do not continue to go on. That is where the child is identified in need. This is the Wonders Diagnostic Assessment for Phonological Awareness. This page right here is the first task. They're given a word orally, and then they're given the 3 pictures and asked to choose which one rhymes with the word that was given. If they are able to pass this one with only missing 1, then they move on to this assessment, and this is where they produce rhyming words. So you take away the pictures and you just give them the word, and then you ask them to give you a word that rhymes with it. And they can give you a nonsense word or they can give you a real world word, and either one would be counted as correct. So when I analyzed this data, in order to analyze the data I collected, I used a Google Sheet and I looked for patterns between individual students. I created a sheet that organized each assessment, the phonological and the phonemic. I divided each one of those assessments into subtests within it, and I chose Google Sheets because I use this to track my data for my reading groups and whether students are moving and phonics skills. I added visual markers to my sheet so that way I can quickly identify any patterns in the data. Each subtest is comprised of 5 questions, which made it easy to add the markers. So I used the following proficiency codes. They would go green if it was 100% or better, blue if it was 80%, which was approaching proficiency, yellow is 60%, which is below proficiency, and it would turn red if it was 40% or below, which equaled far below proficiency. Most of the students I assessed did not make it past the first couple of subtests, which can be seen on the tables that follow. I added the students' ethnicity and language identification just to look at a deeper analysis of the data. So this is the 2 sheets. You can see this is the phonological awareness, the students, each task in the subtests of the phonological, and then the same thing with the phonemic awareness. And I can categorize them with the colors. So my findings were at a quick glance of both assessments I gave. I could see that the overall group of students did much better on the phonological awareness test than the phonemic awareness test. Looking a little deeper, the 5 students that scored far below on the phonological awareness also scored far below on the phonemic awareness test. This also is consistent with the other diagnostic assessments, the phonics survey that I used, that they were assessed with at the end of kindergarten and also reassessed at the beginning of first grade. And I used that to identify the students that came to my group. The phonics survey showed that these 5 students were unable to identify more than 80% of their letters and sounds. These 5 students would benefit from instruction in recognizing and producing rhyming words. I filtered the data in the phonological awareness assessment sheet by the first subtest, recognizing rhyming words, since this was the first skill in the developmental sequence in which these skills are generally learned. Now, I'm able to identify the students that have a deficit in this skill area. So for my second data collection and analysis, after I was able to identify these areas of difficulties, I chose to focus my small group instruction on recognizing and producing rhyming words for phonological awareness. I chose an activity on identifying rhyming words for my second data collection. The same two groups of first grade students were given the activity. I used an activity that was found on the Florida Center for Reading Research website. It's a great website with lots of small group reading instruction, explicit small group reading instruction skills. The activity is a rhyming word form of the game bingo. In the activity, the students were given a bingo board with 9 pictures on it. Each student had 9 counters to use to cover a picture on their board if it rhymed with the picture that I held up. We continued the game until everyone's pictures were covered. I used a tally sheet with 3 columns to mark when a student was able to identify a picture on their board that rhymed with my picture. So column A was their name, column 2 was correct identification, and column 3 was incorrect identification. I marked a student correct when I held up a picture and they correctly identified the picture on their board that rhymed with my card. I marked a student incorrect if they identified or incorrectly identified the picture, and if I saw that they had a rhyming word on their board that matched mine but did not identify it after I said the word several times, I marked it as incorrect. This would allow me to see if the student was consistently correct or incorrect identifying rhyming words. It also showed me students that were still missing the identifying the rhyming words on their board. So this is the activity that I got from the Florida Center for Reading Research. And right here you can see that it comes with some explicit instructions on how to give the activity or follow with the activity. And this is what the board looked like, and these were the cards that I was given. So my findings from that data collection was that only 2 students were proficient in identifying picture cards that rhymed. 2 of the students showed improvement in identifying rhyming words. The students that scored low on the initial data collection were still scoring low on this activity. The activity was very overwhelming for several of the students. They were confused by what they were supposed to do. They had a hard time looking at all 9 pictures and choosing which one. So it was very overwhelming for a lot of the groups. Some students were calling out incorrect rhyming words on their board or a word that wasn't even on their board and it didn't rhyme. So they were kind of all over the place with giving me rhyming words. So for my third data collection and analysis, I chose to do another identifying rhyming words activity with my 2 groups of first grade students. And I have been giving them explicit instruction daily on identifying and producing rhyming words. So I chose to do another activity from the Florida Center for Reading Research website, but this activity was more hands-on and allowed the students to manipulate pictures of rhyming words. I felt that this activity would give students more ownership of their work and gave them a tangible piece of work to take with them when they were complete. The students were given 20 rhyming picture cards. They had a cutout and then an 11 by 14 piece of construction paper. I told them to cut out the picture cards and then group the rhyming cards together and glue them to the paper. Due to the ability of this group, I did tell them that there were 3 picture cards in each group, except for one group that only had 2 picture cards that matched. To analyze the data for this activity, I used a tally sheet again, similar to the one that I used in the previous collection, except this one I only had 2 columns, the one with the name, and then on column 2, I just recorded the number of correct groups of rhyming words that they were able to put together. After inputting the data on the tally sheet, I looked for patterns of students that had a majority of groups of rhyming cards grouped together correctly. There were 7 groups of rhyming cards. If a student made 6 to 7 correct, they were proficient, 4 to 5 correct was approaching, or 3 or less was not proficient. So this was the activity for my data collection number 3 that was taken from the Florida Center for Reading Research. This was the objective. The student will recognize rhyming words, the materials that were provided, and this was the activity that was done with the students. My findings from this data collection was that the group of students were more successful with this tactile activity. They were excited and really trying hard to find the matching rhyming picture cards. 5 out of these 12 students did better with this activity than one used from my data collection 2 activity. And the students were, I noticed, unfamiliar with the name of the picture card, and had to ask for clarification several times. But afterward, they were able to identify the correct rhyming picture card. And so out of 7 total groups that they could have made, these were the correct groups. So I had a wide range, anywhere from 2 groups total correct to all 7 correct. My reflection from this data analysis and inquiry was that the diagnostic assessment I used in my data collection number 1 was very accurate, and I was able to focus on specific phonological awareness skills my students were lacking. The activities I chose for my data collections were very informative and helped me guide my next steps for instruction for both groups of students. I have seen a significant improvement in both groups of students in identifying and producing rhyming words, and that the explicit instruction on phonological and phonemic awareness has been beneficial for these students' acquisition of phonics skills. My next steps for these students would be to continue the explicit instruction on phonological and phonemic awareness. I want to find more meaningful and interactive activities that would enhance their participation and also retaining their knowledge of phonological and phonemic awareness. I would reassess these students using the same diagnostic assessment from my first data collection. Also assess them on the tasks that I have been providing that instruction on only, and not the whole entire assessment. And then that would be just identifying and producing the rhyming words. I would continue to provide explicit instruction on the sequential phonological and phonemic awareness skills according to the developmental sequence. So I would continue the assessment until they struggled again, and then I would stop, identify which groups of students needed which skills, and I would explicitly teach those skills. While providing instruction on targeted phonological and phonemic awareness skills, I would also simultaneously provide instruction on phonics to make sure that my students were acquiring the skills that they needed to be successful readers for the remainder of their education.